Hello, this is Silke here from Lottel magazine and welcome to the Lottel Queer Conversation series. Today I'm here in the studio with Georgina Abrahams to talk about Lesbian Space Project and LINC. Welcome, Georgina.
Thank you, Silke. Thank you. And I'd like to begin by acknowledging that we are on Aboriginal land, always was and always will be Aboriginal land.
Thank you. This morning I went through the Lottel archive and it is so exciting to look at some history, and this is our January cover in 1994. It has Georgina on the front cover with the announcement she made that evening in Town Hall that we raised $250,000 for an amazing project that was about to take place. Georgina, do you want to tell us a little bit about the history? Because I guess for us this is really important to start recording this kind of history that Australia has experienced back then.
And Lesbian Space and everything around it is a really good story. It's worth telling. I came out in 1980, so I was 24, and I came out into a very creative and feminist and empowering lesbian culture and community. I was very lucky. And all through the 80s, every year, a different state would put on a lesbian conference and festival for a week or a weekend. And when that ended, like when it finished in Adelaide and there was a discussion, another state put their hand up and said, next year it will be in Alice Springs, or it will be in Melbourne, or it will be in Perth. I don't think we ever made it to Tassie. But I was lucky, I went to nearly all of them. Usually 300 to 400 women from all around Australia. And there would be weekend of workshops, and then in the evening concerts or theatre. And I loved the women I met, what I was learning, how I was growing, and how I understood that lesbian culture is so vibrant. It's our music, our relationship and our perspective on patriarchy, our relationships with each other. They were, and with the world, with children, with our parents. I felt very proud, and still do, about lesbian culture. And I'm so grateful for that decade of being able to meet so many amazing, diverse women, and to listen and to learn and to contribute. And then it was Sydney's turn in 1991. And it was the largest one I had been to. It was, the year before was Melbourne, and that was big. But the one in Sydney, we had UTS in Broadway for the weekend conference, and we had 1,500 lesbians from all over Australia attend that weekend conference. It was incredible. There was so much to participate in, and we spent the year before really creating it, making so that it would be as interesting and as vital and as informing as we could. And along with the conference, there were a team of women who put on a festival. This is the cover. And the festival went for a week. And there was theatre, there was comedy, there were forums, there were concerts. It was an incredible week of non-stop performance. And that then ended on the Sunday night with a concert at the Opera House. And that was, again, a night of such visibility and pride and humour and enormous talent. We had opera, we had Judy Small with folk, Deborah Cheetham with opera, we had rock. It was incredible. We had choirs. It was an amazing gathering. And I was involved with the conference mostly, working with a wonderful team of very collaborative women, because we billeted, we provided childcare, we provided food, and it was all like for about $80 for the whole weekend. Mm-hmm. We ran it, because we all volunteered, everything was very affordable. Yep. Probably the dearest thing, which I think was $50, was the Opera House concert, but that was at the Opera House, and it costs money to be at the Opera House. And the festival the whole week it was exhilarating. 20 years later, as you know, because you supported us, we held a reunion of the Opera House concert with many of the performers from 20 years ago and their new ones. And over that weekend, we held a whole weekend of activities. We had the bush dance on Friday night. We had a walk around Newtown and a poetry and a debate and an art show and markets all day Saturday at Newtown. Mm-hmm. And then we had sport all day Sunday, and that culminated in the concert. But that was a weekend. Yeah. But this one was for a whole week. Yeah. And we ended up, when we came together and we finalised our money, we had money left over. Sorry. There was about $25,000, and this was 30 years ago, money that we had made. You know, we had hired venues, we had Witch Theatre doing a whole week of different plays, but we had this money left. And we sat as a large team of women to look at, well, how can we best utilise this money to support and further lesbian culture in this country? And we knew we would like to give some money to the next conference, which was in Brisbane. But we had $25,000, which was quite a lot of money 30 years ago. Yeah? Yes. And that's because everybody for that year had worked. And we held fundraisers during the year too, you know. But we'd all worked with our hearts for free. And we loved doing that. It was our service to put this amazing event on, this cultural event. We were in all the papers. It was big news, you know. It was fantastic.
And I'm not surprised that the thought developed of buying a space for lesbians after you just experienced a week of total support by lesbians obviously wanting space. Yes.
And what we had found through putting this week on, that it wasn't easy to find venues that would allow us to book the space for a night, for a week, to a group of lesbians. That was quite challenging. We did find spaces through the trade union at the Tom Mann Theatre. Bondi, we held the Witch Theatre was at Bondi Pav, run by progressive people. We found venues, but it was challenging. And at the time, there was this notion that if you needed, $500 to do something for lesbians, if 10 women got together and put $50 in, you'd have $500. So our thinking was, well, why don't we amplify that? Why don't we have a space which we own where we can, as lesbians, and for all women, all who identify as women, could come together and we could have it as a base where we could run things, whether it was a dance or an information session or, whatever we wanted.
Were there examples out there in other cities in Australia or overseas?
Overseas, yes. And I had travelled and I had been to lesbian centres in London and in Europe and in America. And I met with the women who were helping run those places, and I sat with them and I heard what they felt worked and what didn't work, and what made a space well used and popular and safe, and what didn't. And I wanted to share that knowledge and hope we could learn from it. We don't have to keep reinventing the wheel. And London had a fabulous lesbian centre. They also had a pride centre, but a place where lesbians and all women, or all who identify as women, could utilise as well. And we we really felt the need for that. At that time, it was something that we wanted. It felt important. So I, with some other women, we put out a survey asking about 15 questions, and we got a lot back, nearly 1,000, saying where would you like a space, a centre? What would you like to see happen in it? Who would you be happy to see using the space? I mean, one of the answers to that was one woman wrote, no Taurians, or something silly like that, because obviously her ex had been a Taurian. You know, some women wrote silly things. Some women wrote they did not want trans lesbians using it. Most said, not a problem. So we got a real feel from that survey, which actually went loosely into a lotto as well. And it got well distributed, and we gathered them and we went through them. And we had the idea that if we could raise in 1 year, because we didn't want to be doing it for years and years, 1 year, if we could raise $250,000, we could buy our own space, not rent it, not have a mortgage. But at that time, you could buy a building in a fairly central area for $250,000. So expanding that idea that if 10 women put in 50, we thought 500. If we could get 500 checks of $500, and that might mean that 5 women would put $100 in each, and we'd have 5. That meant that during that year of 1993, women held a tattoo competition, cake baking, debates, dances, wonderful. Like 1993 was a non-stop social, incredible, out every night if you wanted to be, and it was to raise their check, you know. But what it did was really encouraged a lesbian, events every weekend. There were so many things to go to. Launched it 30 years ago in November in 1992. The idea, what we hoped would happen. And we said, let's start at the beginning of 1993, and by the end of the year, let's have the money to buy our building. And we had the support of all the different wonderful variety of lesbians. We had S&M women, we had sporty lesbians, we had scholarly academic lesbians, we had creative lesbians, we had socialist lesbians, we had spiritual lesbians, we had women who loved to be at the pub at nights and play pool, and we worked really hard that year. I know for myself, I was once a week, I would speak at a different lesbian with a group about answer any questions, talk about why it was important, why their check was important. I went into pubs, I went to Lesbian Line, I went to sporting groups, I sat with the gay and lesbian choir, but there wasn't a week where I wasn't talking, invited to a group, and we talked about the project, why it was important, what it meant, and what it meant for that group, where they could rehearse, where they could come together. And
so at the end of that year,
yeah.
How much did you raise? Where were you at?
We had, women did bring checks that night, and we had busy counters, you know. But there was a point where I came out onto stage. Julie McCrossan and Virginia Bell were emceeing, and they were brilliant. And we had the support of different gay men's groups too, who were very understood, because they had lots of spaces, and that was wonderful. But we didn't have any. You know, we didn't have anything, not that we wanted it necessarily on Oxford Street, but we didn't have anywhere where we could go together. That was ours. And so we had one of those machines where the names of people who had given money would run across the stage,
yes.
You know, all the groups,
Yep.
and you could read it all night. It just went around, and when there was a new check that would get typed in by Kelly, and then you would see who, you know,
Yep.
all the different groups and individuals who had contributed.
Yeah. So the night at
On the
Town
night,
Hall,
yep.
I remember it well.
Oh, you were there?
Of
okay,
course I
of course
was.
you were there.
And Julie McCross and Georgina Abrahams were the hosts, and
they
they
were.
gave the audience hell.
That was so funny.
You are not getting out of here without having donated some money.
That's
It
right.
was-
Open your purses.
It was just, the bus was just incredible. But there was a time when you realized
Yep.
we didn't reach it
No.
as well,
No.
right? So walk us.
And the agreement was
Yeah.
that if we didn't reach it by the end of the year, which was our agreement with people to give money, then people would get their money back.
Okay.
That it was a centre or bust. And because we had everything very well documented and we knew everyone who had given $10 to $1,000, you know, like my parents gave money. You know, people's brothers and sisters supported, you know, it was overseas. There were a group of Japanese lesbians who got together and sent a check. Same in America, same in England. Like, it was well known. And we promoted it overseas. So, come on, we need your support, sisters, you know, send us $500. But it was during the night, just after, I think it was halftime, we could see that we were down about $50,000. Yeah, we had 200. And we were going to be true to our promise. If we don't have the 250, you would get your money back. And then, so they came out and said that. And money, actually, I don't know if you remember, because we're upstairs as well at the town hall, women were sitting, money fell onto the stage, like it rained money. It was very incredible, you know. Women were crying, they were laughing, they were putting their rent money in, you know, so that we could meet this target and that we could have this, you know, we could make this a reality. And Eva Cox, wonderful, amazing Eva Cox, had offered her building in Glebe, where we had organised the Lesbian Conference and Festival, and had seen us working together and loved it. She said, I will sell you my building in Glebe for $250,000. So we knew we could get a building, but we needed to reach our target. 200 wasn't the target, you know? And then a woman, at the last woman, a lesbian, came forward and said, I will donate 50,000.
At 5 minutes to midnight.
Very close.
Very close.
And we went, we've done it. No, it was incredible. I don't think I slept that night or for nights after. I was so excited. Yeah. And I love that the group of women, we were scrupulous with every cent, everything was receipted. Mostly if we had expenditure, we covered it ourselves, you know. We wanted to ensure and to create a sense that, yes, this was real, this was possible, and this was accountable. You know, that it was very transparent. It's important. It's really important.
All raised the money and you bought a building.
No, not quite.
Not quite?
Not quite. No.
What happened?
Eva, you know, had said, yes, you've got the building, and in the next few months that will become available. And we continued to hold early in 1994 different fundraisers just to keep, you know, because more money is helpful, you know. You need money for all sorts of things. So, and the committee was very solid, and again, we worked well together, and I co-convened this project with Sandhall, who's a wonderful lesbian feminist, and it was great to work with her, really great. And I was aware that in 1994 in New York there was the Gay Games, and it was 25 years since Stonewall, and there was going to be 1 million people marching through the streets of New York to honour that, to celebrate that as a part of the Gay Games as well, and the cultural festival there. And that was in June. And I left Australia to go to that with my partner at the time. And we bought a combi and we travelled around America and Canada. It was wonderful. And I left a very strong committee. Things were really on an even keel, things were good. The money was there. There was a lot of, as I said, goodwill and faith. And in that time, the next conference was in Brisbane. And a trans lesbian was on that committee. We didn't, the women attending, the lesbians attending that, didn't know that. And they didn't know until they got there and they met the committee, and the committee welcomed them on the opening night. And there were, I wasn't there, but I've read and I've heard from a significant number of lesbians who were, that there was a lot of disruption and unpleasantness because there were a group of vocal women who did not want to be participating in a lesbian weekend with a trans lesbian. And it was chaotic.
Yeah.
And there was going to be a walkout of women who were there who didn't want to stay if this particular lesbian stayed. So she left. But it was pretty ugly from what I heard, and I felt really sad about that. And those women who were involved in that disruption came back to Sydney, and I think they were strengthened by their win. And they were very clear that they did not want the lesbian space to be inclusive of trans lesbians. Now, we had a constitution. We had worked on it through the community really hard. We talked about this issue at length. I was aware that this had been an issue in other places, and I was hoping we could avoid that. The understanding was, as a centre, all types of women will want to use the space. It's not my lounge room. Like, I'm a non-smoker, non-drinker vegetarian. So in my home, I have a right to be able to say, I don't want you to bring animal flesh into my home. I don't want you to use drugs in my home. I don't want you to smoke in my home. I have that right. But in a community centre, all types of lesbians and women who and lesbians who identify as women will use that space. So I thought it was important that in the toilets there were safe injecting rooms and cubicles, so that if women were going to use drugs or to shoot up, that it could be safe for them. They weren't using dirty needles. You know, my preference, I wouldn't want anyone bringing McDonald's into it. But the thing is, it's not my centre. Yeah. It was a community centre.
Yeah.
And, you know, you can have a room, a space where women don't smoke and a space where women can smoke. You know, like all of those considerations to welcome all. This was a space for all types of women. And I don't have to use that centre every night. If there's something on that night that I don't want to go to, well, that's okay. And we'd also had an issue where the woman who donated the 50,000, which is a lot of money, did so anonymously, and her name came out, and she was not happy about that, and she withdrew her 50,000. Again, Lottle covered all of this. So we had a big public meeting and we said, look, we're fundraising. We can make the 250, but we don't have it right now. And the agreement was that if we didn't reach it, you would get your money back.
Yeah.
So Lottle and Star Observer and the other publications said, the money's been withdrawn. This is terrible, but it has. If you want your money back, you have 6 weeks to apply and your money will be returned without question. And if you don't, if you want us to keep fundraising so we can buy this building, then we will.
And you...
2 people asked for their money. So they still, okay, we want to keep on. We want this.
Yeah.
You know, it has been marred with this controversy. And it was controversial and it was disappointing. But then after the Brisbane conference, that's when it got really horrible, really. So we had our AGM in December at the Heffron Hall up in Darlinghurst. We had hundreds of women. I don't know if you were at that AGM, but it was a big AGM, hundreds and hundreds. The hall was packed. And in writing the Constitution, we had been very generous because we knew that women had become members of Lesbian Space from all around Australia, and they couldn't all get to the AGM. We allowed a woman who did attend to bring with her 4 or 5 proxy votes. So if you couldn't come, you could give me your vote and I would declare your membership and the way that you wanted to vote about a certain issue. Looking back, that was a mistake because it was exploited. So a group of women who had been at Brisbane presented at the AGM with a whole lot of proxies, hundreds of them. Now it costs $10 to become a member of Lesbian Space. So they lobbied, they acknowledged that this is what they did. I'm not surmising this. They agreed that this is what they did. I had a sense that this was what was happening because some women had told me. And we had, as I said, hundreds of women there. And I felt hopeful that this particular amendment about the Constitution being changed, so it only the only women, lesbians who could use the centre were those who were born lesbian. And I respected what was important to them. What I was upset about was what they wanted to change a constitution that had worked and had successfully raised a lot of money and a lot of goodwill. That if they wanted a space where for women born, women only, then make that space. That wasn't what Lesbian Space Project was about. It was for everyone. And that emphasis that it was for all was the theme through the whole year that we raised money. Answered that question every week. Yes, and women who didn't feel that they were lesbians, who didn't feel that they were particularly welcome or included in the community, wanted to believe that. They wanted to believe that as women who were identified with sadomasochism or sporty women or socialist lesbians, they wanted to feel that this was a place that was theirs as well, which is why they contributed and supported it. You know, it was a dream. It was a bit utopian, but I was, you know, it looked like it was possible. So the amendment came up and I spoke very passionately about why if we change this, it will change the whole flavour of this project, its intention, what it's about. And the vote was close, but we lost the vote. The vote for it to be inclusive was lost. And it was very emotional. There were lesbians who were crying. There were lesbians who were cheering. So Eva Cox spoke against the change as well. She was one of the lesbians who spoke. She was amazing. As a Jewish woman who saw her parents live through the Holocaust, she got up and she said, we can't be discriminating. We can't be doing this. This is not who we are as lesbian feminists. So when the Constitution was changed, she withdrew her building because she was so upset, like many of us were, by what felt like a takeover of women who had supported the project up to then, not in massive ways, but they had been around, you know, and they knew what the project was about. So it became very contentious, and it was all covered again in our press. And I don't know if you know a lot about the grieving process, but one of the things, when you lose hope or you lose a vision, that's like losing a partner. Like, it has an equivalence with grief of losing something else, losing a job, losing a home, losing a partner. When there's something that you really believe in and that is dramatically affected or taken from you, it could be faith in another person. There's a grieving. So we had a big grieving. And I said that I no longer wanted to be a part of the committee. Yeah. And our committee, that we had worked together for years, stood down, and a new committee was created. And the new committee decided to buy a building in Newtown, and they didn't have enough money, so they had to mortgage, which was never the agreement. But the money that was there, they bought a building. The building didn't work because women were really upset by what happened. They didn't agree with it. Yeah. It was not what we had raised the money for. Yeah. So the building wasn't utilised. There was more debt. That committee rang me and other women and said, we can't keep running this. We're running at a loss. We can't cover our costs. We're in debt. Would you like the project back? And me and others said yes. You have effectively dropped this baby on its head and you're returning it. It's a bit brain damaged, but yes, we want this project back, on the understanding that this committee will resign. And they did. And that's where essentially the present day committee, Marsha, Megan Slenning, Deborah Hayes, came together. The council had created a whole lot of new regulations about a building, and it wasn't considered fire safe. And they came through and inspected this building that we now had responsibility for. And they said you need to spend up to $500,000 on getting this building safe according to our new rules. And we didn't have that money. So we held a public meeting. We said, we want to sell this building. We're sorry, but we can't afford to keep it. But we can do something else with the money. And that's when the grant idea came up, that we would have lesbian spaces all around Australia. We would invest the money that was left from the sale of the building once all the costs were covered. And that money we would use then, we would invest, and the interest we would give out grants every year. There was interest then. We don't have interest anymore, but we made money off that money. Yep. And we gave that money out. And we've kept the principle intact. We still have done that. 30 years later, we still have that principle. Yep. And one of the things we did with that principle was we bought a unit in Surrey Hills, I think a one-bedroom apartment, which we've rented, and we've used that money for the grants. And that unit has gained a lot of value over the years. Plus we also had money invested for the interest. So all of our accounts, everything's very accountable, transparent. Any lesbian can see that, you know, and all the grants that over the last 15 years or longer, we have given out more than $500,000 worth of grants to great projects, all types of projects, all around.
It's the only grant project exclusively for lesbians.
Correct.
In Australia.
All who identify as lesbians.
Okay. So now we are at this stage where LINC was incorporated.
Yeah, we changed the name because we weren't a space anymore.
That's right.
And we also stated repeatedly, and again Lottle reported this, that if a group of lesbians came forward and said, okay, we want to run a lesbian project, a space, we want to run a community centre, we've got a building, we want to buy it, and you've got the money, we would hand that money over. Again, there would be a community meeting, a consultation, but if these women were serious then and capable, then we would do that. But that hasn't happened.
So Lottle applied for a grant 1 year, and we got some money, and we actually built our archive, which is really important work, and which we have completed now.
Great.
So this is great work LINC has done. And can you give me a few examples that you thought worthwhile?
Jean Taylor in Melbourne has applied for a number of grants and received them, and she's published books about lesbian herstory, particularly in Victoria but all around Australia. You know, I think she's published now 4 books that we have helped support. Poetry books have come out, CDs, some wonderful music. Some lesbian music festivals have been funded, art exhibitions. During the Gay Games here, we gave a $5,000 cheque to the committee, and that sponsored lesbians from the Pacific who wanted to participate in the games, but they couldn't get here. And we funded those lesbians to be able to come and be a part of the games. Again, Lottle covered that. There's a photo of the big $5,000 cheque that we gave. There was one lesbian who wanted to pick up older lesbians in a van and take them out every month, and she needed a special licence. We gave her the money for that, and she did that. Dancers all around Australia have, and community events. Jewish lesbians up in the mountains wanted a big banner so they could carry it in Mardi Gras. We funded that banner.
So here we are, 2022.
30 years later.
So the burning question for me is, what is the future?
What about LINC? Well, the committee is ageing, essentially. We're older lesbians. And we continue to have a commitment and a real sense of the importance of that money that is in our care for the community. But we would love younger women, younger lesbians who want to be a part of this, to come forward and be on committees. And that's not easy anymore. The idea now, I think on voluntary level, working on committees, most women, they get paid for being on committees, and they get paid well, you know? And this concept of doing everything for no money, it's a bit, it's a bit in the past. Now you've got skills, your time is precious. If you're going to do this, well, you want to get paid. Fair enough, you know, I understand, you know. Would love to have younger women come along and say we want to carry this baton on. So we're in discussion as a committee. Where do we want to be in 5 years' time? And we're looking at what the possibilities are. Sadly, the concept now of a lesbian spaces in a building, I mean, it might come back into fashion, but it's not current. a lot of younger lesbians, and who maybe don't identify as lesbian, younger queer women, having a space just for other women is not something that feels as urgent or as relevant or as meaningful to them. I think it is, because I know the power of sitting at a conference or a festival or in the Opera House with over 1,000 women, lesbians. Well, just to finish with the LINC, I'd like to say I still think there is a big need for these grants, that every round there are lots of lesbians applying for money with great projects. So I would hate to see that not continue. You know, I would like, you know, for money to continue to be distributed, to be continuing to support lesbian culture all around this country. I'm hoping that that will continue. You know, I think it will for the next 5 years. Then we'll have to review.
And Lotte will do whatever we can to support this process.
Great.
Thank you very much for joining our podcast today.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Georgina.
You're welcome.
And